This locust had been starving for 3 years. The boy picked it up and played with it in his hand. The locust crawled straight onto his finger and began gnawing at a scab. In no time, the wound was completely cleaned up. The boy's mother owned a locust farm. She usually roasted them into crispy snacks for sale, so crunchy that the kids next door would cry with envy. But lately, the locusts had lost their vigor, and their egg production had significantly declined. Lucy tried everything to solve the problem, but nothing worked. One day, she accidentally fell inside the breeding shed and passed out. When she woke up, she was covered in locusts, which were eagerly sucking at her blood. That's when she realized the blood was coming from her injured arm. A wave of fear and anger surged through her. These little creatures were feeding on human blood. That night, Lucy couldn't shake off what had happened. But the next day, she noticed something unbelievable. The locusts that had fed on her blood had become incredibly active. Not only that, they started shedding their exoskeletons and laying eggs again. To confirm her suspicion, Lucy unwrapped the bandage on her wound and stuck her hand directly into the swarm. Within seconds, the locusts swarmed her arm. It was an excruciating pain. Afterward, Lucy picked dozens of locusts out of her wound. That night, she was too excited to sleep. If this worked, she might finally turn things around. The next day, Lucy donned protective gear and entered the breeding shed, only to find that the locusts had grown significantly larger overnight. The entire shed was filled with freshly laid eggs. This was her golden opportunity. She immediately sought help from Jack, a man who had feelings for her, to expand the breeding area in the backyard. At night, she continued feeding the locusts with her blood. Soon, she was producing them in bulk, paying off her debts, and even building another breeding shed. But her body alone wasn't enough to sustain the entire swarm. She started buying large quantities of pig's blood, mixing it into the feed, then solidifying it into a gelatin-like form to nourish the locusts. Everything seemed to be going in the right direction. However, her daughter couldn't bear it any longer. She had been mocked at school because of the locust farm, yet her mother refused to give up the business. One day, the daughter finally snapped. She stormed into the breeding shed with a knife, slashing wildly at everything in sight, unaware that she had just unleashed a catastrophe.